Sure. There you are. Morning, how are you?
Just fine. How is it going for you?
It's going pretty well. It's going all right. I had to get up this morning and I had trouble like setting up this meeting. It's my first time using Zoom because we never used it at Carroll. So I was a little confused, but I got it all set up. So
Well, we're pros now after COVID. So,
oh yeah, for sure, for sure. How is everything?
well,
Uh
it's going okay. Little
yeah.
crazy, but it's going all right. It's been up and down a little bit this year, and
Yeah.
I've been gone. Had surgery the first day of school, so I
That's
kind of missed a
crazy.
lot of the fun part of it, I bet.
Yeah, I know. I heard about it. I saw it all over. I saw it all over the news and everything. I was like, oh goodness. I appreciate you doing this for me. It's greatly appreciated. I thank you for taking your time and doing it.
That's
Um,
okay. No problem.
it's just I just gonna ask you like 6 questions, and this meeting is recorded because my Professor Root has to look at it, and because it's pretty cool here. They have a minor in leadership, so that's my minor. So
Yeah.
it's pretty exciting. I don't really know my major, but it's just basketball at the moment. But if you don't mind, if we get started.
Sure.
So my first question for you is, uh, as a leader, like what is your definition of leadership?
Leadership, I think, is when you take the mission of the organization or the purpose of, whatever group that you're leading, that you look at the mission and that you carry it out, and you must be open to all different individuals that you work with. And then the most important part of it, I think, is that you have to um, remember that you're accountable for the whole organization. And so you look at the big picture and not just little individual groups. And so I think leadership, um, is carrying out the mission of whatever you're trying to do, or whatever you're trying to accomplish. But more importantly, I think you have to be willing to take the bad with the good.
Mm-hmm.
And a
Agree.
good leader, and it's hard, but there's always, I remember one of my college professors always telling me, if you're pleasing everyone, then you're not doing a good job.
Yep.
So I remember that daily.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what Professor Rude tells us. That's what our professor tells us. That's a great definition. Okay, so that leads me to my next question. Who or what inspired you to be a leader? So who's your inspiration for becoming a leader or put you in this position?
Well, that's kind of odd, because sometimes I think when you talk about college majors, mine, Carter, was economics and business administration.
Wow. Okay.
I had no idea and that I wanted to go into education. I kind of fell into it. So I went to Bethel College.
Go Threshers. I got a
Yeah.
cousin that coaches basketball there. That's
Oh,
funny.
really?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, sure
Yeah.
do.
Okay. So I went to Bethel there in North Newton, and I had a professor that was very influential with me, Dr. Simpson, who I really did not know freshman year what I wanted to do. I really wanted to go to Emporia State, and because of my background and my mom being a single parent, we couldn't afford it. And Bethel, I couldn't afford to live in a dorm, and Bethel gave me a lot of scholarships. And back then I got Pell Grants and different things like that. So this professor just, I don't know if I got in his group or what. He was my advisor, and I went into economics and business administration. And then junior year, there was a secretarial studies program at Bethel, and it was closing out. I mean, it was gonna close because of lack of enrollment. And the professor begged me to take all of the classes in business education just to keep the program open. Well, I
Really?
worked in the law office since sophomore year, so I had shorthand, office procedures back then, all these business classes
Hmm.
that we had. So I did it, and then I got my minor in education. Then when it came to student teaching, they wanted me to go to Catholic school, and I wanted to go to a public school. I did not want to go to a Catholic school. So I ended up at Carroll because I had CYO. I was real active in the Catholic Youth Organization. And one of my priest friends was there, and the Bethel, I mean, they made me go to Bishop Carroll. They were so excited because they had never had anybody at a Catholic school. And I was upset because I wanted to be in a public school.
That's funny.
And then I did my student teaching, Carter, and I hated it at Carroll.
Really?
I did not teach my first year. So I thought, you know, I never dreamed I'd be a teacher. And so then I worked in a law office, which I had done, and I did child support enforcement with the state Department of Social and Rehabilitation Services. And I love that work. I did work for Harvey, Rice, Reno, McPherson County, and I loved it. And after college, that's what I did for that first year. I worked for a lady attorney in Newton who is she was very forward, you know, she was a leader, was the first lady to run for lieutenant governor in Kansas. And I loved working for her, and I did that. Well, then she moved to Norton, Kansas, and Carroll had an opening, and the priest, Father Andy, begged me to try it. And I said, no, I didn't want to do that. I didn't like my student teaching. And then my supervisor in Topeka, I told him about it. And he said, you know what, go try teaching for 1 year. And if you like it, fine. If you don't, I'll hire you back. You'll have your job back. So I went, and then I've been at Carroll 36 years since.
That is so crazy. I had
Yeah.
no idea that you like didn't want to do that, because like from my perspective, that's kind of how I am. I don't know what I want to do, and education's kind of on the back burner. That's just, it's like my backup plan, because I love how, especially at Carroll with like Coach Dom and all those guys, all my coaches, has really inspired me to coach and be a leader and stuff. That's a great story. That's awesome. I did not know
So
that.
I think, you know, I think of Dr. Simpson a lot. He's passed away now, but he kind of was a father figure for me. And my dad left my mom. So, you know, I was with my mom. And so father figures in my life were not always there.
Mhm.
I mean, my brothers were, but it was a little bit different. So Dr. Simpson always pushed me to go the extra mile, and he always believed in me. And he said, you know what, you can do whatever you can do.
Mhm.
And so when I went to Carroll, I did that first year of teaching, and I taught 10 years.
Mhm.
I was going to leave and go to Southeast, offered me a position in business, and I was going to take that. And then Carroll came back and offered me an assistant principal job. And the principal there, Barb Mahoney, who was very well known in education here, she said, Tish, you try that. If you don't like it, the public schools will hire you.
Yeah.
And then I went in administration.
That's
So I kind of feel like I fell into this leadership role. Although I will tell you, leadership, I probably started doing it in college. With CYO, I was a leader and an advisor as soon as I was 18, because we didn't have anybody that would take over the youth group.
Mhm.
And CYO was a very important part of my life, Carter. It was different. We did a lot of traveling, and without cell phones and everything. I can't believe it. I would drive to Cunningham and Pittsburgh, Kansas on Wednesday nights. And I think I didn't even have a cell phone. And I would drive 3 hours by myself and come back to my car, because we did retreats and things like that. So leadership kind of started for me in that role. I think I became a youth advisor for our youth group and for the parish and also for the region CYO, and then developed into my current role probably.
Okay. That's awesome. I honestly did not know that. I don't think a lot of people, that's pretty cool. Okay.
It's a long-winded story. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
but
no, that's awesome. I love hearing it. That's awesome. I appreciate it. So my next question is, what is the most important risk you have taken as a leader, and like why did you take it?
Well,
Or you might have just explained it, but you know.
no, I'll tell you, probably with my first year of administration there, the principal resigned, who had been there a while. And I had worked with him as an assistant principal. So I would say my first year as principal. And he resigned. I stayed home that year when I had our Ariane, our second child, and I thought I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. And then the position came open and I applied for it. And when I got it, I even got sick one night. I made myself so sick, and my husband, I drove myself to the hospital and I had to have IVs because I just made myself so sick, because I thought, oh no, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. I don't want to go back to work.
Mhm.
And he said, you can't do this. You signed a contract. You got to do this. And I said, I can't leave my kids at home. Well, then I went to work that first year and I had 2 assistant principals that were not meshing well with the staff. I mean, it was not good. And I had to hire a new counseling department head. And I also hired one of the current department heads there, Mrs. Neville. I had 2 counselors I had to hire that year. But during the first year, I could tell that my assistant principals were not gelling. And I let them both go
You
at
both
the
of
end
them?
of the first year. And I thought, okay, is it me the problem or is it them? Because people are going to look at me and say, okay, she got asked these 2 to leave.
Mhm.
There was a male and a female. We got along fine, but they did not gel with the community or the teachers. And that, I'll tell you, it was scary. And I thought, maybe I'm the failure. But then I brought in my team and they stayed a couple of years and I still had to make some changes. And then of
Yeah.
course, now my team's pretty consistent. It's been, Mr. Lemunion's been with me from, after a couple of years, I brought him on board and the rest of them. But I think that was a big risk
Big risk.
that
yeah.
was, and you have to do what your gut feeling tells you a little bit, what your heart
Mhm.
tells you,
Mhm.
even though it may not be the most popular. And was it difficult? Yes. And I will tell you, Carter, in leadership positions, I haven't had to let go of very many teachers, but there were a couple that I did. And those were difficult decisions. But if you take the right steps along the way in doing it, then you feel comfortable. And I'll tell you, the first 3 teachers that I probably let go at Bishop Carroll, I remember each one of them hugged me and thanked me for what I did for them and for being gracious with their exit. And that meant a lot to me. I mean, I cried when they left my office, and I don't know if they cried,
Mhm.
but I thought I did the right thing, but at least I did it in a humane and gentle way.
Mhm.
They knew it was coming, because that's the other thing. I think you have to document, and I worked in the legal field, so I'm extra careful about that.
Mhm.
But document your steps, take the steps necessary, take time to think through your steps. And then if you feel like you're doing the right thing, then go forth with it.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right. That's awesome.
I have one other
Go
thing though,
ahead. Go
Carter, I
ahead.
want
Go
to
ahead.
tell you too. This is another good lesson I learned. Because now my job is more fundraising than being raising of funds, alumni relations,
Mhm.
things like that, budget and stuff instead of the day-to-day principal things. But the other thing that I learned in this was probably my second year. We used to have a waiting list at Carroll. And, when we accept kids, we only accepted 225 kids.
Oh, wow.
Like right now we have 320 freshmen. So back then, if I had 275 kids, there were 50 kids that we said, you can't come.
Really?
So we allotted each parish a certain number of kids. Another risk that I did, and I think I learned this from my mom, because she told me to always be honest and you treat everybody the same, no matter who they are. But I had somebody that a priest begged me to move in that classification, move them to the acceptance.
Mhm.
But the student, they had applied late on their application, and everybody that applies late is deferred. I don't care who it is. And the priest called me and said, do you know who you deferred? And he gave me the name and I go, so? And he said, no, you don't understand who this person is. and they were probably influential in the parish.
Mhm.
And I said, Father, that doesn't matter. I said, their application was late like everyone else.
Mhm.
That family, no, the mom wasn't happy with me at that time. And she called me one time and chewed me out and yelled at me and everything.
Yeah.
But the dad, in June, when I accepted him, the dad called me and thanked me for treating him, their family, and this situation like I did everyone else. And he said, I have a lot of respect for you. And that was another big
Mhm.
risk that I took, that I've used it every day to this day. And you've probably heard, Carter, some people will say, oh, Mrs. Nielsen, let such and such have a parking place because they donate money. That's not true. You
Mhm.
know, everybody. And so if I could tell everybody that story when they accuse me of favoring somebody, I would, but I can't do that.
Yeah.
But in the back of my mind, and I've shared that with other classes that I've talked to, is that you always do what is right and you will get rewarded.
Yep.
Never
I
take, the
agree.
low road. Okay, take the high road.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
So my next question is, how do you hold your followers accountable, everyone around you accountable?
Okay. I have a hard time in my delegating. Sometimes if they don't follow through, I do it because I feel the buck stops with me.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, the other thing is I would never ask someone to do something that I won't do.
Mhm.
So like right now, I'm managing the janitors and the custodians. I should say custodians. And if I ask them to clean the stools and I see a mess and there's a mess there and they can't come, I go do it. And some of my superintendents have gotten after me and said, you can't do that. I said, oh, yes, I can, because I wouldn't ask. I just feel like you should not ask someone below you that you manage or you supervise or you work with to do something that you would not do. And so the thing is, I try, to hold them accountable, but also I worry about our reputation and what parents, what they're going to perceive. And sometimes if they don't follow through, my administrators don't follow through, sometimes I will go and say, okay, then I'm going to take this over if you're not going to do it right. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But you have to write them up, and those aren't fun. I think that's after you've worked through with them, and then there's the consistency. You need to write them up and put it in writing and have them sign and say, hey, this is what you didn't do, and
Yeah.
it needs to be done. But then I'm not very good at delegating. I admit that, but I also feel that it's a bonus in relationships with people, because my people will do anything for me because they know that I will do it for them too.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I think what you have to do is be willing to put somebody on a plan of assistance, and those are not fun conversations.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, Carter, and we've got people at Carroll that have been there a long time, but sometimes, even if they've been there a long time and they're not doing something, you have to address it, not let it go. Otherwise, you're going to lose people in your community you're following, and they're not going to want to follow you. And it's bad because for your community, because then people, they say, oh, if you want something done, you have to go to this person or you have to go to this person. And I don't like that. And so when it gets to that, hopefully it doesn't get to that point, but if a situation did, then you have to say, okay, we've got to nip this in the bud.
Yeah.
I've had to do that several times, these plans of assistance. It's not fun, or when somebody doesn't do something right, or they don't obey you, when you're supposed to do something, I say, I know you didn't agree with me, but I asked you to do this and you didn't do it.
Mhm.
Why? Then you listen to them why, but you tell them why you asked them to do that,
Yeah.
why it was important that you got the job done. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes, that does make
Okay.
sense. Okay. Oh, okay. Here we go. This is a good one. Have you ever wanted to quit being like a leader, and like how did you handle it?
Oh, a couple weeks ago when I had the protest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was my first week back from surgery. I
mhm.
mean, back, and my doctor had told me to work 4 hours
Oh
a day.
my, you did not, did you? No.
Yeah, I did not. And then I got in trouble from my PT therapist, who are one of my former students and a former trainer at Carroll that are working on me. They said, you are tight as a knot. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. But so, that was this mask issue. Our numbers had increased
Mhm.
to where the CDC and the diocesan and the Sedgwick County Health Department, we had agreed that when we got above 6%, we would go to mask.
Mhm.
Nobody was wearing mask. And I've been wearing a mask since August 6th because of this potential surgery and stuff. And I'm glad I did, because I had 2 positive cases of people that were vaccinated within my office that I worked with.
Yeah.
And the doctor said, if you wouldn't have been wearing a mask, you wouldn't have been able to have surgery.
Same.
So I've been wearing a mask, and I was in the minority at school in my
Mhm.
administration.
Mhm.
They did not want to go to mask, but our numbers were at 11%. And the
Yeah.
diocese said, we said you would go this. So we did it. 2 of the TV stations called me Monday and Tuesday, and then we were dealing with this. I think the protesters came on Tuesday, and we had students and teachers very upset. But we had no choice. And we said we would do this for 10 days and reevaluate it. Well, you weren't pleasing anybody.
No.
On Wednesday, after the protesters and that got on the news, I had 4 or 5 calls of negative people. And they threatened me. They weren't going to donate to Bishop Carroll anymore. They weren't going to donate to the church. Well, some of them had never given anything to Carroll anyway. So when I looked at the record, I said, well, doesn't matter. But I told, what I did then, Carter, I gave him the stewardship talk. I gave him, and I can do that. I said, you've been raised in the church and you give back to God, not to me, not to Father so-and-so, not to Bishop Kimmy, not to, the school. You're giving back to God. So that, and God has blessed you in many ways. Why are you telling God you're not going to give back to him? Where is your faith?
Mhm.
I also had that day a lot of emails and cards and letters from people that they did not like mask, but they supported us in where we were in our decision. And that was reassuring.
Mhm.
But, and then I had one longtime donor who just was really angry, and she was protesting. And not even a current parent. She was a past parent and not a grandparent or anything. And she just laid into me for 45 minutes on Thursday. And, I was so tired, and I just said, this isn't worth it. I came home and I told my husband, I think I ought to retire like you. I don't know what we're going to do with health insurance or what, because you couldn't please anybody. And then there were teachers upset with each other. There were students upset with each other. I had parents crying because their grandparents dying of cancer. They have to wear a mask, and their granddaughter felt like they were being bullied. It was just really rough.
Mhm.
And raising money for me is stressful.
Yeah.
And when I had to raise this 4.7 million for the air conditioning, we've raised 3 million. I still have 1.7 million. That's stressful. And I just think, I don't want to ask people for another dime, because I'm afraid people see me and they say, oh, there's the dollar sign.
Yeah.
That's what Mrs. Nielsen wants. And
Yeah.
it's not that.
Mhm.
But the good thing is, like, seeing you,
Mhm.
seeing my alums. That's the best thing we can do. And we remember, and most kids had a pleasant experience at Carroll. There are some that didn't. But I think that's the reward. And you just have to look at the good things.
Yep.
And remember those bad things. And right now with COVID, it's going to be up and down with everything. Everybody's going through that. Our world, it's a mess right now. So I just think, but COVID has taken a wear and tear on a lot of people.
It
And
sure has.
a lot of administrators and teachers. I mean, we've lost some teachers. retirement and other things or just left and gone to work in business. They said they can work remotely. Why wouldn't you work remotely and get
That's
paid
true.
just as much?
Yeah.
So, but you always have to go back. You're going to always have good and bad days in everything, just like, you experience. And you just have to look at the good things and say, okay, the Lord put me here for a reason. And why are we here? We're here for the kids.
hmm
And that's why. And if you focus on the kids and not the adults, sometimes
hmm
it's a lot better.
That is true. So I have like another question. It's not on here, but has everything since like kind of settled down since like the mask issue at Carroll? Has it kind of, you know, topped off? Is it a lot better is what I'm asking?
It is. We went, okay, we had another thing that was stressful on this, and you'll get a kick out of this, but it's talking about dealing with leadership and dealing with people that are leaders. Our pastors, we had Pastors Day Mass on Friday.
hmm
That was the Friday. On Monday, we would reevaluate our Sunday night, our numbers, and then on Monday, make the decision whether we didn't have to wear masks or not. And I had the administrative team came to me, and Father, our chaplain, said, what are you going to do with the priests that won't wear masks? Because some of them have had COVID. They're not wearing masks at the parish because, see, you don't have to wear them there. And I said, well, Father, didn't you tell them in the email that we are under a mask mandate? Yes, but they're not going to wear masks. And Mr. Shuckman goes, Tish, what are you going to do if they don't wear it? And I said, then they won't come in the building. And he goes, what? I said, I'll send him the email then. And they go, oh, okay, you send it. They didn't want to send it.
Yeah,
And
I
I said,
wouldn't
okay,
either.
I said, you chickens, like that. But
Yeah.
so I sent the email to the pastors and I said, they're all aware, especially the ones that are in schools, that we had these rules and stuff, but the ones that, so they're all the parishes that had schools. I said, you know what the diocesan rule is? We hit 11%. We're under a mask mandate until Monday, whatever the day is.
hmm
I said, so when you come to our building, you are expected to wear a mask.
hmm
And then I left it there. And then my secretary read it and she goes, I said, I asked that you mind this mask requirements up. She goes, well, but what if they don't want to? You didn't say. So then the next line I said, you will wear a mask if you come to this event.
There it is.
And every one of them wore it. And one did call me the night before, and one of his families had been protesting and he wanted to apologize. And he goes, I really don't want to wear a mask, but because you asked me, Mrs. Nielsen, I will wear a mask. I said, thank you, Father. and you have to remember, Carter, they're the ones that pay for my kids to come.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the priests, like the fact that you guys were worried about them not wearing their mask out of all people,
They're
them.
supposed to be the examples, but see,
Exactly.
and then you get these, and this was the other thing, at the games. Now I haven't been able to go to the games and I've been wearing my mask when I go out, but we had some of the protesters told some of our other families, we're going to go to the ball game and take pictures of the administrators that are not wearing a mask and see they don't want to wear it. Well, at our place, it'd be 3 not wearing a mask and me wearing a mask.
hmm
And I am wearing it till December because I have PT and all this, but I probably will still wear a mask just because of the kids and the variants and the high risk right
Mhm.
now. And we had, one of my staff members is pregnant. That's another reason why, things like that. But people in leadership, that's a good point that you brought up. These priests, I told them, you are role models. You're supposed to be role models for our kids. And by you not doing this, but see, this is such a divisive issue.
Mhm.
Some of them have had COVID, so they don't think they're gonna, get it again. But I said, you got to protect your people,
Mhm.
So it's divisive.
Mhm.
But it's one of those things where you have to take a common ground. And no one wanted to write that email. Did I want to do that? No, but I had to.
Yeah.
And then, on Friday, I had to be prepared for the protesters to come to the all school mass. And what if they would have came in and said, we're not wearing a mask? Now, my thing was, I had already talked to the police department. You call 911 and have them get escorted out. Then people said, oh, that's what the protesters want. You shouldn't do that. Well, if they disobey, you have to do that.
Yeah.
But luckily, everybody wore a mask. And
Yeah.
I don't think the protesters came, they stayed out there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Last one is what advice?
Oh, we're not wearing masks, Carter, so everything's fine now, right?
Okay. All right. Thank you for
Only
clearing
those
that
two
up.
months.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
okay,
Thank you.
all right,
Thank you. Yeah, that would be a good read. Well, I appreciate you getting back on Zoom for me.
Okay.
So what happened was, when my computer died, I was like trying to just troubleshoot it because my computer was updating. It just completely shut down, was updating. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do it on my phone. And
Yeah.
I recorded it on my phone, and I went to turn up the volume and no volume, nothing. So all we do is just that last question, and it shouldn't take that long.
Okay.
So ready? It is, we've already went over this second time, but what advice do you have for future leaders and like leaders like me upcoming?
Well, I think what I told you, and it's kind of ironic, Carter, since we talked, I was reading an article from an educator one of his blogs, and it was on leadership. It's kind of ironic. And some of the things that I think I told you was, and I want to refer to it a little bit, because what I told you was, I think it's important as a leader that you always do what is right and what is for the common good of the organization or mission you're trying to accomplish. And to remember, it has to be for the common good. And sometimes you're not going to please everybody. And this article called, he said it's a new term now, he thinks in leadership, is called absentee leadership. Because he said that there's a lot of adults that complain about their leadership or managers because they don't do anything. And I think I kind of talked to you about that. Sometimes you just feel like you're always when you're a leader, you're responsible, the buck stops here.
Mhm.
So you're responsible for the whole organization. So if someone doesn't do something, and that goes along with what I told you of my problem of not delegating, or when I delegate and then the job doesn't get done, I'm frustrated.
Mhm.
And you know, he talked about that it seems like a lot of young people feel that their managers and managers and supervisors do not really want to do what's uncomfortable or take the step forward. And I thought that was interesting. The other thing that he brought up was he thinks part of it has a problem to do with social media, that we never had to deal with that in the past.
Mhm.
And now everything is out there. And that's just added another layer of issues and problems to one who's in a leadership or organization. And I can be honest with you, when I injured my shoulder and I had my surgery and I couldn't type with my left hand, I haven't been on social media. And I mean, I've been gazing through it, but I haven't commented. And you know, it's really refreshing.
Oh yeah, of course it is.
I just feel you spend so much time on that. It's nice to see what people are doing and get updated, but then I think, you know, there's other things that are more important
Mhm.
that you need to be spending your time with. And I think this has caused an issue with some of the problems that we're having today. That, I mean, because some of my alums tell me, you know, we never had any of those issues in school. There's bullying, you know, the fighting, the different things that go on, and all the issues that people are debating. So I just thought that was ironic. That afternoon, I was reading that blog from him, and he even had an interview. I couldn't find it. I must have deleted it, but he interviewed Warren Buffett, who was talking about how you just have, as a leader, you have to stand up, and it's not always the most popular route to take. But if you're doing your job, like I told you, if you're doing your job, you're making people unhappy and uncomfortable. And that's what we're called to do.
Yep.
Is it fun? No.
No,
But
it's not.
you need to do it because you're doing what is best for your organization or your mission.
Thank you very much. That's
You're
all I
welcome.
need.
Okay.
Again, thank you. Thank you so much for doing this for me.
Okay, you're welcome. Good luck and keep me posted. And if you need
Appreciate it. All right,
anything
well,
else,
have a good
holler.
rest of your day.
Okay, you too. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.